All right, I think we're ready to get going. Welcome to the afternoon of day 2 of Big Rig. Excited to have everybody here. So today we have a panel, Next Dream Team, CS and marketing, and when we align, magic happens. So very excited to have this panel today. I'll let Abby and Latané introduce themselves, give a little background, and then we'll jump right into it.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I don't know, maybe a fox in the hen house, or one of these doesn't look like the others. So I am the Chief Market Officer at 6 Sense, and we do a lot to partner with our friends in customer success at 6 Sense, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about some of the specific things we do as well as my opinions on it, which may or may not be welcome, but that's okay.
And hi, everybody. I'm Abby Hammer. I'm Chief Customer Officer and Head of Products at ChurnZero. So I run our customer-facing teams, success, support, implementation, and I also run our product team. I also, unsurprisingly, have opinions about customer stuff, so I'm excited for this.
All right, and as the Chief Marketing Officer here at ChurnZero, I have opinions on both sides, and both of these women are my friends. We first met out at SaaStr last week and had a little conversation, started to get into it, and then we really started to see there was definitely a lot of overlaps and a lot of common interests, but there's also some areas where I think marketing and CS have slightly different views on where they fit. I do think that what I love about the two speakers up here is they are ahead of the game on each of their kind of industries, if you will. With Latané, she just wrote a book. It's about no forms, no spam, no cold calls. It's trying to get marketing ahead of everyone else of what everyone's doing. It's like inbound 10 years ago.
It's at the swag shop. Go get it.
But that idea of you have to change and do things differently, and you need to kind of own the relationship with their prospect and then ultimately maybe the customer. And then with Abby and what we are doing and she is doing on the CS side of knowing so much more about a customer that you can own net revenue retention. You are now at the C-suite, you're at the board because you can drive outcomes that the actual business is looking to do. So I think this is going to be a great conversation. So let's start with just what is the relationship, what does alignment look like between CS and marketing? Latané, let you start.
Well, first of all, I want to define what my job is. And so there's 3 things that I think a good CMO focuses on. And I say good because just like there's good CSMs and not good CSMs, there's good CMOs and not good CMOs. So I think that a good CMO does 3 things. 1, understand the market. And this is critical. I saw one of the little churn monsters is bad fit, right? You guys have all had the bad fit. Part of my job is to understand the market and make sure that we are pointing our valuable resources to the right customers that are going to be a good fit for us to sell to. That's part of market. There's a bunch of other things too. The other big thing, second pillar of what I do is experience. A strong CMO is insane about experience all the way across the board. And I differentiate 6 Sense from everybody else based on the experience I deliver. It's not what I say our brand is. It doesn't matter what I say 6 Sense's brand is. It's what our customers and prospects and partners experience, and even employees. And then the third part of what I do is I optimize revenue. And optimizing revenue is not leads. And this is important. Again, difference between a strong CMO and a regular CMO. Because a regular CMO might say, all I care about is source pipeline. All I care about is leads. If that's the case, you're host. Got to tell you that right now. And you don't have a strong CMO. A strong CMO optimizes revenue, which means delivering predictable pipeline, optimizing the sales velocity formula, which is ASPs, cycle times, and win rates, and net retention. That's SaaS economics, and part of my job is to make that more repeatable, more scalable, and move every single dial with market and experience. So I think it's good just to level set And I think when you have that level of level setting, then all of a sudden alignment becomes a lot easier. And one of the things I thought was interesting in one of the sessions is someone said, you know, and I hear this a lot, and I love the ownership that each one of you feels. Like, we own the customer. We own adoption. I think that's great. But I think if the case is that really just you individually own adoption and own customer success and own the relationship with the customer, you are not going to have a company that stays in business very long. And so that's important. And so that alignment around objectives, and my objectives being also tied to adoption, net retention, NPS, how many contacts are engaged at an account. And we'll talk a little bit about how you know if your customer marketing is resourced well enough or not, because I think there's some telltale signs. But ultimately, you know, CS and the chief marketing officer should be shoulder to shoulder thinking through how we drive customer success, how we drive ultimately adoption of our product.
I mean, I'm in line with you on a lot of those things. I think the Venn diagram between marketing and CS is that we try to listen first. You know, that's how you're going to understand what someone wants to buy, what someone wants to experience, what's going to make them feel value. And so I think that's where CS and marketing have a lot of opportunity to learn from one another and make each other stronger. The signals that we have for listening can be different just based on the data that's more readily available to each of the teams. And I think that's where we have an excellent opportunity to align is around that data. Like, my marketing team has better insight into sort of outward intent on competitive searches or, you know, involvement with reviews. I might have a little bit stronger of a look on usage data or engagement with some of the teams that I manage. But if we share that data, then we're both stronger at whatever side of the, you know, the programs that we're running, that we're ultimately sort of fall underneath us. We're both stronger on that. I think a lot of where the unclear territory between CS and marketing actually comes down to what types of programs you're running. If you run a lot of human-led programs versus self-serve programs, I think that line gets even mushier, because marketing has been usually our main person who goes out and runs self-service programs, and CS is usually a little bit more heavily on the side of human-led. And I think we've talked a lot about in a lot of sessions about the fact those things need to start to blend together, need to meet in the middle. And that's where I think when marketing and CS don't understand one another, it's usually around that line. But I think coming back to that we're all trying to understand the customer and give the right message at the right time to the right person, that's where we have a lot of alignment.
Right. So I think that sounds great. And the idea, though, I think a little bit it comes down to when the rubber hits the road. And you talk about net revenue retention, and that's a number that you follow, and it's a number that you follow or own, or follow or own. But ultimately it comes down to where are you affecting it? How is marketing affecting the NRR? How are they doing campaigns and programs that can help assist CS? Or are you more saying that we have a bigger influence than the CS team does on those numbers?
It's not a bigger influence. It's a different influence. And like, I think the things that marketing add to your programs are first and foremost scale. So take the reference requests, the bane of everyone's existence. Mine too, by the way. So we can align on that. So there are good ways to do it, and then there's bad ways to do it. And to me, a good way to do it is we want to avoid a one-off reference request at all costs. It is not scalable, right? So we created a group reference. So every month, you know, we have a calendar, and guess what? Sales, and we have multiple people on there. We have user groups. We have all these other ways to fulfill the reference need that avoid the one-off reference, right? And so that's, you know, just a little thing, but it's about scale. Think about when you think about adoption and product adoption, you know, you don't want to be the last to know when we're dropping product, right? So part of my job in product marketing is to enable the CS team on what's coming before the release, right? So all of our enablement sessions happen before the release. Then we have a ton of customer enablement, so you're not out there in the wild on your own trying to teach people what's happening in the new release. That's pretty important to adoption, right? But again, it's to make it more scalable and to be able to have those communications across the board. So scale is a big thing that marketing can add to your programs. The other thing that I think is really important for marketing to add and be really conscious of is multi-threading. So, we're B2B, SaaS, we're a more enterprise sales motion, and just like 9.3 people, according to Gartner, make a purchase decision, there are multiple people within your accounts that decide on renewals and upsells. And I think that sometimes what can happen to someone like yourself that walks the halls with that customer is whoever the main day-to-day point of contact latches onto you and says, has this ever happened to you? And they say, you can't talk to my boss. You can't talk to anybody else. You can't do this. And they try to almost hold you hostage, right? But the secret to our company being successful, because that person can get fired, that person could be a blocker, they could be a lazy monster, they could be all the different monster types, right? A drama, manic monster, right? And so part of what I help you do is say, guess what? This isn't coming from you. This is coming from the company. And I have a responsibility as a representing Sixth Sense to engage the entire account and help you multi-thread and help you get relationships outside of Mr. Manic or whatever it is. And so that's another, I think, really important way that marketing helps you with your ground game. And so that's something that we measure. We measure how many engaged contacts do we have on average per account. And I hold my customer marketing team responsible for that, right? If we have only one engaged contact, we're hosed. And so what are we doing to help, draw people out and get them engaged with our programs that may or may not be directly related to the product? Could be a community that we have, could be a certification program, could be lots of different things.
I think where marketing and CS at our organization have felt like we're gelling the best is when we think of the marketing material as the solid foundation on which our customer comms sit. Because if we know that there is a level of communication and involvement and sort of pull in direction that marketing is giving our customers, then that gives CS the space to not have to try to figure that out and own that, but rather be able to expand upon that and specialize that and personalize that even further based on the relationship we know with the customer. But having that foundation, it's like knowing your ABCs. You can't start doing a full sentence till you know the basics. So that's where it's been really, really helpful for us. I think one thing that I've heard in several sessions, there's CS is still forming our space in the organization, carving ourselves out, bulking up. Sometimes we feel a little bit like the unwanted child in the room. And so I think, and there's a lot of product didn't help us on this, and sales screwed us over on that, and so I think marketing is a group that can help right some of those ships. And then it's less, if you have that foundation, then there's a lot that customer success can and be responsible for in terms of further taking that. Because as great and as targeted as a piece of marketing collateral be, the moments that you have to combine that with other CS insights, combine that with a human who steps forward, who knows people at the organization, knows intent and outcomes at the organization, that's where that can go to the next level and really have an impact with the customer.
So understanding that the customer and how we engage them is so important, and as marketing gets more and more involved, for SaaS companies right now, marketing, we're focused on the pipeline of the funnel for the most part, and then we'll support the CS side when we have opportunities and we can do that. Do you see, in terms of, I guess, two questions. One is, what is customer marketing? Because that has a lot of different definitions for different people. And then, do you see it ever sitting in CS or having sort of maybe dotted lines into CS? But But I guess the first part is...
No.
Hells yes.
All right, so let's start with what is customer marketing?
Well, I guess I'm going to ask a question to the audience. How many of you feel like an afterthought for your marketing teams? Yeah. You are. And that's the problem. Honestly, that's the problem. It has nothing to do with where you sit. It's about the investment in the function overall. And I was riffing a little bit outside this, but like, I think for too long, SaaS economics and like the way that marketing has been budgeted for is all about CAC and customer acquisition versus customer retention. And the reality is when you get to any sizable amount of customers, all of a sudden, you have to start to look at those economics, I believe, a little bit differently. And, you know, and marketing needs to be much more proactive in investing in customer marketing. And investing, and so I guess what I want to make sure to clarify is 2 reference coordinators called customer marketing is not what I'm talking about. Like, that's fine. You need to have reference coordinators. I agree with you. References are the bane of my existence too. But that is not truly what I would define as customer marketing. You know, customer marketing is looking at data. It's understanding patterns. It's dissecting those patterns. It's understanding a journey. Like we talked about adoption in one of the sessions I was in. You know, one of the most precious times during the life cycle of a customer is the kickoff. It can either go well and set you up for success, or it can be a total shit show. And then for a year, you're trying to recover from the kickoff meeting. There's a lot that I can do to make the kickoff go smooth, you guys. You know, I can send welcome packs, I can send swag, I can send an email from our CEO thanking them for being a customer. There are a million things that I can do in that super critical period when they probably have buyer's remorse, they're nervous, to help them get kicked off in a meaningful way. Now, there's lots of other inflection points within a customer relationship. It's my job and customer marketing's job to understand those. And I do think some of it goes back to like your philosophy. So we've always at Sixth Sense had a philosophy that our customers eat first. It drives our sales team crazy. So when I run an event, I say, this is how many spots we have. Customers get to come first, and then what's left over, the prospects can come. Every single time. Our customer community, nope, it has to be 30% minimum. Our CMO community, it has to be 30% minimum customers. Like, I work so much harder to make sure that our customers are involved in our CMO community versus prospects. And we've just said that since the beginning, right? We're getting tickets to a giant box. If customers get all the tickets, great. If not, then you can invite some prospects. And that's just kind of been how we've rolled. Not every company works that way. But for us, like ultimately, again, my brand is represented by what customers say about me. And it's a longer game, but it's really paid off for us at Sixth Sense.
So I'll jump in real quickly. So what are the conversations you have with your CS leader in what they need? You talk about you're there to support them. How do you know what they need? How do you deliver them? What does that support look like just for you and your CS team?
So I think one of the things that we did that was really positive together, and product marketing is a big, like customer marketing is one thing, but product marketing is critical. That is the critical glue between product and prospects and customers. And so one of the things that we did at the beginning of this year is the product marketing team sat down with CS leadership, and we said, what are all of the use cases by persona? So we took every single persona and we defined out use cases in Sixth Sense. We then defined out what success looked like. So what are the KPIs that CS can tell a customer to measure success, right? So let's say the use case is a display campaign. Well, how do we know they're successful on display? Well, we should see at least this many campaigns that get this view-through rate, and that deems them success, right? So we defined out every use case, and we defined out the KPIs and how the customer gets value. We then said, okay, CS and product marketing are going to own together upping the average number of green use cases that customers have. So last year it was like 2.5. This year we wanted to get to 5. So make sure every customer has 5 green use cases. And so that has created a lot of alignment between product marketing, because then it's like, okay, well, we launched LinkedIn. That's a new use case. Eric is the product marketer. How many people are green on LinkedIn, Eric? You need to work with CS and help make sure to get these use cases green. And the use case dashboard is CS's dashboard too. So it's like they have the same objectives that sort of helps them come together. But the use case exercise was like, that really helped take us to the next level.
And I wildly agree with the idea and the mapping. Like, we talk all the time about customer journeys and where can people add into that journey, where are we responsible, where is another team responsible, things like that. I think what a lot of CS teams feel right now, and I think some of this is the nature of our space growing and still maturing, is that we're always below someone else on this. Like, we're begging product for data, we're begging marketing for materials, we're begging sales to like stop saying that thing. And it's just, so there's just like, we're always sort of like, yes, I know. So you're always on this hunt to be in charge of your own destiny. And I think that's where, I'll say for myself as a CS leader, I think sometimes I get territorial because I'm just so desperate to have some control of my destiny, when I should be looking for more opportunities to collaborate. And I think how many organizations have done a thing like Latané's describing here, where you actually sat down across the entire organization and talked about what success looks like for customers?
By use case.
By use case, yeah. So we got one. Yeah, there it is. But the fact of the matter is customer success is doing that often on our own, either because other people have different priorities or things like that, and then we're going out and begging and pleading. And I say all of this to say that I agree with you, and I think we're talking about being BFFs here. Get on marketing's good side, because there's a lot of support and help, and again, that foundational stance on how you talk to your customers and what your persona is and what your brand is when you talk to customers, that can be really, really helpful and can get you ins throughout other parts of the organization.
You want to get on my good side?
I do,
okay.
Right now.
I'm going to tell you how to get on my good side.
Do it.
So, getting budget for the user conference is really hard for me. Okay, the CFO wants to cut the user conference every goddamn year. And every year I have to go and put my life on the line and say, it's so valuable, it's so important, are you kidding me? What do we get out of that? I saw a customer who came to the conference and then they churned. And I'm like, okay, so one customer churned. Like, I can't, do we have to measure it based on that? Or you gave out a $46 Lululemon hat. What the hell was that? I mean, this is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with, right? So, and we know it's the right thing to do. And so we go and we fight and we get it. So to get on my good side, 1, invite your customers to the goddamn user group. Get them to the user group, please. Like, nothing is more embarrassing for us than to put on a beautiful conference, swag store, this, all that, and have no people there. It's like awful. We've all been there, right? It's like so bad. So 1, partner with us on the user group, on the user conference. Like, go all in, invite your customers. So that's 1. I would say 2 is like, partner with us on customer comms. You can't own every single communication to your customer. You guys are going to die. You're going to work yourself into death, okay? So let's agree that there are some meaningful things that we can send together to help you, right? And let's pick those, and let's pick the points when we send them together. Because that's another thing, is like when it's like, you can't send anything to my customer. It's like, well, it's actually 6 Sense's customer. So, you know, how do we partner on those type of things? So I would say those are the 2 things, is like partner with us on how we do the comms. And then, you know, and the other thing on the user group is so we are measured on, you know, pipeline is a huge part of our measurement, right? Guess what? I get upsell, I can get pipeline from customers. So if they came to the user group and they drank the booze and they had a great time, all you need to do in Salesforce is check that the user group influenced the upsell. And you're doing me a huge ass favor, right? Was that so hard? No. So like tag your stuff in Salesforce, put your contacts in Salesforce or whatever you use for CRM, throw me a bone with some influenced credit here and there, and we're gonna be great.
And I think if we're saying, hey, marketing teams, how can we do the opposite? How can you endear CS to you? It is that communication line. Because I've seen a lot of CS teams who are like, oh, almost like, it's not so extreme as like we can't talk to our customers, but it's like you have your inbox, Godspeed. You know, everything else is ours. And I think a lot of CS teams are out there saying, we have bigger plans, we have bigger perspectives, we're trying to pick our chin up and look around at what's possible. Give us the means to do that. The number of both customers and prospects that I've talked to that's like, I don't know about a CS platform because my CEO says we've got HubSpot, we've got X, and it's like, that's a marketing tool. Like, what about us? How can we do some of the things that we need to do that can involve scale, but also involve a lot of personalization and direction? How can we do
hear
those
you,
things?
sister.
You know?
I mean, I wrote a book about no spam.
Yes.
I freaking hate spam.
Mm-hmm.
So to the degree communications can, you know, they need to be bespoke, they need to be personalized. To the degree it can come through you, but I can have written it so that it's easy for you to send, you know, things like that.
So actually I have a question for you. I do think an area that CS teams, don't let me speak for you guys, so like throw stuff if you disagree, but like where we question is like, do we have the right persona? I think the right voice is the word I want there. So when we write content, does it feel like it comes from whatever we identify out as a brand? Like, we're always very clear on what the value is. I can talk about value that you get out of ChurnZero all day long, but is the way I talk about it the same as everything you get from ChurnZero? So I think what would be interesting is, do you think it's possible to sort of give a CS team guidelines on how to, not that you have to write every single word that we say, but when we write it, how do we make sure we fall in line with the broader perspective?
So I would say it's very similar to how we would work with like sales or BDRs or, you know, things like that. And so one of the things that we do at 6 Sense is we have a message map. And so everyone's sort of trained on the high level messaging and message map. Now, we're dorks, so we have voice and tone. And honestly, you guys don't want to see that stuff. Like, it's for us marketing dorks. So the message map is helpful, and then we do a lot of enablement. And I think one of the things that we ended up doing was we didn't, like, this is another area where you guys get totally hosed, is like, people invest so much in sales enablement. I mean, millions of dollars in sales enablement.
Ops, how much? Too. Like, ops and enablement. Like, no one's like, yeah, my sales team has no ops person, no enablement person, we're fine. Like, you know, but CS is all out here like,
yeah, it'd be nice to learn a few things. Just love one course. Yeah. It'd be great. So one of the things that we did is we put enablement in one group, and it's revenue team enablement. And a lot of the things that my product marketing team has to do is to be able to create enablement for the CS team. Because I think that's another kind of like critical place.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Very much so.
So data. Data has been a topic today, topic of the kickoff session. What are 1 or 2 pieces of data that your team would like to share with other teams, especially marketing? Like, Abby, what do you think a marketing team could really use that your team sees every day on the data side?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of marketing teams, you guys are ahead of the curve, so you guys may not fall into this camp, but a lot of marketing teams don't have access to usage data, don't have access to engagement data. A lot of CS teams also don't, but we'll skip over that. So if you have access to that, if you've climbed that hill, great. Be generous with that information. Like, do not keep that to yourself. And I don't mean just with marketing. I mean with everybody.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
That should be, you disseminate that as far and as wide as you can, because that's where CS can really gain traction in an organization, is when you become the knower of the customer. Do we need to understand who someone is? Do we need to understand, what they want, who they are? If CS is the person that doles out those insights to other groups, then you have a unified message on who customers are, and you have a real position in the organization. So I think a lot of what we can give to marketing to further inform your programs is that specific customer level insight, how they talk to us, how they use our product, how they do and do not engage with the content we send out. So that's what I try to turn over to my marketing team, at least.
I have a question, because you said that you would like customer marketing to be in CS. What do you define as customer marketing?
Customer marketing.
So what would you guys want from customer marketing? I've got a notebook. What's the wish list?
Yeah.
So something that we have been trying to do, and I'm seeing in other companies, is the marketing creates a position called assistant. And that person basically have a CS assistant and for marketing, right? So it's a customer success marketing assistant and business development marketing assistant and so on. So that way marketing has reach or arms in different places, but we control what that person communicates to marketing. So this is what we need. That person belongs basically to me, but doesn't report to me, reports to marketing.
But it's kind of like a liaison?
Sorry?
Is it sort of like a liaison back to marketing?
Yeah, so everything we download on that person, this is what we need, this is what we're working on, blah, blah. That person will get the approval from marketing and, get it with the team to work. But we control what's happening. So I think to that point of, we would love to have more control. That, once we implemented that was an point for us.
I like it.
I work in workforce management. And so one of the things we always want to know is, when you're marketing the customers, what are you marketing, and is it going to drive volume into our centers? That's going to create additional staffing. That's going to create additional questions. That's going to create additional work for our centers. In my company, we have a poor communication with product and marketing because they just assume, it's not going to be impactful to anyone in the other group, and then it drives 1,000 new calls.
Right.
Blown out of the water. And so I've been trying to foster relationships with other senior managers within your both departments. And I've had to tell them many times, stop assuming that it won't impact us and just pass the damn information along. We'll determine the impact from what you're doing, but don't just assume, we're just reaching out to Susan and Emily, and it's going to be fine. And that's, it was great. We talked to them. When then it drives 5 more phone calls into us, which creates more work, which means we need more staff, which means we're spending more money. You get the whole idea there. So
I would like to pile onto yours a little bit different, but in the same vein. Oh, I'm so sorry. So she was saying she'd like to know, when marketing is sending out things, like, don't assume all communication is good communication. Like, there is fallout from that, like that message from marketing. Now I've got a spike in support calls or a spike in meeting requests, and there's sort of a trickle effect when we communicate. So some collaboration on that front. I think we saw another hand for, yes.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm always looking for my marketing team is, so I work for a company that all of our customers are engineers and product managers, very highly technical people, not people that love to answer emails ever. So earlier on, Latané mentioned that she can help get champions for her team. How do you facilitate that? Like, how do you help your customer success team, actually, 3 people from your client base, they're always engaging in our emails. Like, I would love to have that insight, and I just don't right now. And it's, I feel like that's just a great way to get champions that, because in a lot of high-tech sort of software, not everyone loves to chat, unfortunately. So it's, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how your process goes to assist, customer success and identifying a bit more champions.
So one of the things, another thing we did that was really helpful, and at first CS didn't really want me to do it, but the reason that I did it was, I think a lot of times what happens is customers will be like, here's the thing, when they buy, they get all this information in the sales cycle about everything you do. And then they're like frozen in time, okay? And meanwhile, your product team is dropping new features and all this new stuff. And unless you have someone ready, willing, and able to like lean in and attend the user group and go to the customer community and look at the new documentation, they're going to be moaning to you about how your software doesn't do this. And you're like, oh my God, we released that like 10 weeks ago. Like, what is going on, right? And I don't think you should have to bear that burden alone. And so I said, well, I'm going to create an engagement report and I'm going to send it to the executive sponsor to show them like, hey, your team is not on it. Like they're not, no one's come to the user group, no one's doing this. No, like, don't be mad at us, you're not getting value out of our software if like you're like, there's an expectation with SaaS. So that was the original premise for it, and I did it with our CAB, our customer advisory board, our executive, to say like, hey, you got to set the expectation for your team to lean in. And so we created this engagement dashboard that shows everything that their teams are attending and involved in, and we gave them a score, essentially. But it's turned out to be much more of a positive thing because we share it with customers. Customers can go right up to a website and request it. They now want to get better. They want to up their score. And it's also really good for CS and my customer marketing team because now I say, I want 95% of our customers engaged with marketing programs. And we can go and we can look at each customer and see, oh, this is how they've engaged. This is how they haven't. Here's the number of people we've got engaged, the number of contacts we've got engaged. So it's ended up driving like a good level of alignment and collaboration.
So I love the idea because we do something similar. But I think what's interesting for me is it's so intriguing to hear an idea I love, but be like, why are you doing that? Why isn't your head of CS doing that? Because the idea of, because now you're talking about getting into conversations around value and driving renewal and things like that. So when we talked about like, where is the line between marketing and CS? I mean, I'm all about the idea. I'm all about the collaboration on getting that information out there. But then when we start to talk about value and the relationship, feels like it's tripping onto CS's side. And I think what happens a lot, at least in teams I've experienced, is that marketing may initially own something because they had the means to do so when CS didn't. But then it means when CS even gets the means, putting that fence up and sort of saying like, hey, can we have that back becomes really, really difficult. Which then leads into when we want to be agile and make changes, now again, we're in a beholden position. Come back to someone and ask for X or Y or Z.
So to be fair, when I talk about value, like customers own some of the journey themselves, right? And I just feel I can shine a light and a mirror on the amount of that they own themselves that maybe is a little more difficult for you as the day-to-day relationship person to be able to.
It's almost like I don't want to paraphrase you incorrectly.
But
almost like like here's your best practices. Are you in this mirror? Like and as opposed to us having to come in and say that. Is that what you're saying for here?
Yeah, and it's like, are they leaning in enough to get the information that they need to use the product, right? And so. Don't tell me that you're upset about not getting any value out of 6 Sense when you haven't attended one thing. So how do you know how to use 6 Sense? Like, right?
We all intimately know that. Like, are you aware that you're the problem here? Kind of conversation. Like, just
and I think
bring that up. Like,
I think that's really hard for you to have.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it is. That is the art of CS right there. Is how to have a productive. It's not just me, it's you conversation. And I think when we talk about great ways to present that information in compelling ways.
So great customers do this.
Yeah. I think when I say like marketing could be your foundational
Do you
content.
look like that?
Yeah, exactly. It's the foundational content, I think, is to say like, hey, I'm not here making up my own rules. Marketing, look, they give us these things to look at. I'm with you on that. I like that because it is, I mean, how many times a day do we all have that conversation? Like all the time, so.
All right, so we have about 5 minutes left, so definitely want to have time for questions. I'm sure we have lots of questions.
How much communication is too much communication?
So she said, how much communication is too much communication?
With customers?
With customers, yeah. I'm interested in your thought on this. I think there's a couple of things to think about. It's what are you communicating about? I think we do have space. Like it's not just like all communication goes into one bucket and then you hit the bell rings and you can't talk to them anymore. People have different amounts of space and willingness to hear different types of content. And I think particularly for CS, you got to play your avenues there. Like, big crossover between CS and marketing is email. Yeah, you may have a lot more of a lower threshold on that. So what else can you work? Can you work calls? Can you work in-app? Can you work these other angles? So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I do think a lot of teams make the mistake of not checking each other and not knowing what the cumulative picture looks like. And then it's when your customer is like, this is the 6th email this week, stop it, that people have a problem. But that's a communication problem internally more than a like customers don't want to hear from you problem.
Generally speaking, marketers have an unhealthy relationship with email. And we've been trained based on the marketing automation solutions of the past. I have a whole book on this. And we think marketing is capturing an email. Yes, my database is bigger. And how many emails I send. And I get a response. And it's like dopamine or something. And then I do it again, and I do it again, and I do it again. Not thinking about the other 10,000 people in that batch of blasts that is like unsubscribe, right? So, so I would say when I say communication, or when I talk about engagement, it's did they log into our community, right? Are they participating in our CMO conference? Did they come to our new customer champagne toast? I mean, these are the kind of things I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, oh, yay, they got our newsletter. Like, who cares? But I think you have to be careful. And I would just ask, I want to see every email that's getting, like, show me the subscription center. Show me what's getting sent. Like, you send 10 emails a week, that's noise. Now they're not, like, that's diminishing my brand with this customer. I think that's a fair question to her.
So we at ChurnZero do it, if it's free content and we also don't want to over-email prospect or database, it can go to everybody. If it's specific ask, like this event, we worked with Abby's team, ops person, and said, can you get us in your schedule? And they would get us in the schedule. It could be, and I got a choice, in-app, email. So there's different ways I can get in front of them.
Yeah, in-app is a whole other thing.
I kind of trust Abby's team to know the cadence, and then I'm very happy to get involved and to be put into that.
I do want to underscore what Latané said, though, around we forget the importance of things that you put out there and people go get them when they want them. We think like we have to shove every single piece of information in someone's face, and if you've done self-service well, then that's going to work on your behalf.
Right here?
Sorry, I started pointing. That's my fault.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just talk. So our company has acquired several other companies in a short period of time. So now all of a sudden we have all these new services. I would love to have some sort of reference tip sheets for myself, but also customer facing. So right now, even if we have their POCs come into our team meeting and say, this is what we do, these are our services, I would love to have a reference and then also something that's kind of like an elevator speech for my customers, because as CSMs, we have to sell without selling. Look for those upgrade opportunities, look for those, upsell opportunities for our sales partners, upgrades, all that kind of stuff. So I'd love something to kind of show my customers without like acting like I'm selling. If that makes sense.
Or I'll do you better. I mean, we're kicking off a campaign right now. So for us, especially in the enterprise, we're a platform. And so it's common that you have 6 Sense and maybe some other niche piece of technology that we could do, right? And so I said, it's time to kick these guys out once and for all in all of our accounts. So I emailed our 2 heads of CS, and I said, why don't we run a campaign? So they're working with us. We're identifying all of the customers that have this other piece of technology that we know we can displace. And we're running ads. We've got a landing page. We're running a direct mail. So we're doing like an integrated campaign with CS, and then we have talking points on like compare and contrast. But that's just good marketing, is like.
I think we talked about the fact that CS doesn't feel seen sometimes. Like, think about how much marketing does for sales to get dollars in the door, and then we own a lot of revenue, and usually we're upselling on our own.
Yeah.
We're like looking for that moment and being like, God, I hope I've got the right pitch here. So that's where marketing can be extremely helpful to us to lay a lot of that same groundwork that they lay for sales when they do those things.
Those are components of a good campaign. Talking points for you, things like that. So.
One more question. Yes.
So you mentioned too much customer communication. Who is the person that decides too much communication is happening?
Oh, this is we're gonna make us like fist fight here. Like, I'm just kidding.
Who decides?
Who decides?
Communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dependent on, okay, we're doing a campaign around a new feature, so this is all the outreach that we're doing. That is then a product marketing activity. So the CMO would decide that, or who decides too much?
I don't think it should be one or the other. I think that should be something you discuss together. And again, to me, it comes down to the type of communication. The most beautiful forms of CS, even if they are en masse, don't feel en masse. Like, there are ways to do that in a really smart way, which means, again, you have more room where you can do more before people feel exhausted. But it's got to meet the reality of everything else that's going on in the ecosystem of communicating with customers. So I don't think it's any one person. There's going to be multiple teams, even beyond just marketing and CS, who have things they want to talk to the customer about. So I do think it has to be a joint decision.
Email is not the only form of communication.
Yes, again, yes.
Right? There's ads, there's social, there's in-app, so I think that if marketing's definition of communication is just email, that's when it's probably getting overused.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well,
Plenty of snack time.
Yes, get your snacks.
Thank you all. Thank Latané. Thank Abby.
Thank you, guys.